All right. Well, welcome back to Always on the Hunt. This week's episode is another amazing guest. We have Curtiss Singleton, who is an industry living legend. And it's not just me who's saying it. Commercial Integrator Magazine confirmed it as well. He has spent decades in the AV industry, leading teams, driving growth, and playing a pivotal role in multiple business turnarounds that ultimately led to successful acquisitions. So Curtiss has a strong focus on culture and leadership, built winning teams for some of the biggest brands in our industry, and has helped these companies evolve to meet the changing landscape of the AV industry. With all that said, let me welcome in Curtiss. Curtiss, welcome to Always on the Hunt.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very kind words.
Yeah. Well, they're well what's it called, earned, right? You definitely earned that. I gave a brief summary of your background. Why don't you give the listeners a little bit more in depth, like a short summary of your, 30 plus year career?
Yeah, sure. I'll date myself and I'll try to keep it pretty short, but 30 plus years now.
Right.
If I include some work that I did on the consumer side of the business with Pioneer Electronics. But during that time, working for a manufacturer, for 30 plus years, starting out obviously as a regional sales manager, spending 12 years as an RSM. But at that point, kind of felt that I had, topped out, and this whole new idea of becoming a leader sounded great. And it always does until you have to really, start looking at the sweat equity, of what it takes. But definitely something that intrigued me very much so, and something that I wanted to pursue, and had great mentors that saw my passion and really helped me to start planting seeds and to really help teach me great muscle memory around what a good leader looks like.
That's awesome. So let's talk about, we'll kind of jump into, your leadership philosophy. Like what are some of the principles? Like, when you think of being a good leader,
That's a great question. It's funny. I keep this on my desk. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of the title or the author. John Maxwell is obviously one of my favorites. My wife bought me this book when I was looking at, becoming or wanting to become or try to become, a leader. And very short book. I would encourage anyone that's interested in making that jump to take this. John Maxwell is very specific in his reads that he says the chapters are short, but the focus is very much something that you need to digest, and you need to take your time in doing it. So out of the 100 pages, or just over 100 pages in this book, it really, for me, it kind of got down to two things. Number one is wanting to be the kind of leader that people will want to follow. Mm-hmm. But first, you need to understand, and you want to be the leader that you would individually want to follow. And what does that look like? From integrity to hard work to investment into everyone on the team, the organization, but also your partnerships with your customers. And really having that type of ownership, as a leader.
Right.
But I think in the end, also the other piece that in the beginning, it's kind of hard to give up control, but be willing to give your power away. Be a river and not a reservoir. And I think the more you do that, it allows you to surround yourself with people that may have better skill set, but ultimately brings a team together. But, the old adage is iron sharpens iron. And right. So, bringing people that have better skill sets than you, help to teach you a better skill set, but also to be a better leader.
Right. It's like what Steve Jobs used to say about like hiring people that are smarter than you, and, for you not to tell them what to do, but for them to tell you what to do. Right. So, obviously team building is a big part of your leadership philosophy, building a good team, building a good culture, strong culture. So talk about that. Like when you're putting your team together, what's going through your mind? Like how do you assemble that team, and what are you looking for, or how are you developing that talent?
Sure. I think the first thing, really not trying to put the cart before the horse, but the first thing you have to do is to really look at the organization in itself and fully do, a SWOT analysis, both internally and externally. You need to look at people, you need to look at products, you need to look at programs, you need to look at a number of different things that the company offers. You may have a stellar group in front of you, but they're not being used to the best of their abilities. So I think really first understanding why the company potentially is failing or has hit that revenue glass ceiling, what's causing that. When you get that answer and you're really able to dive down into the people piece to this and look at either sales acumen or technical acumen, it really allows you then to start fortifying the idea of what type of team that you need to be able to put together.
Right. So you're putting this team, right. You're putting this team together, and it's, typically a team of all-stars, right? You're interviewing, you're hiring well, you're being selective. Throughout your career, you've worked for some pretty good companies that people want to work for. So you get all these pieces together. It's kind of like, when I think about sports, sometimes teams will go out there and acquire all these all-stars, but there's no chemistry and there's no culture, and they don't do well. How do you put all these pieces together?
Well, I think you really hit kind of the nail on the head in talking about culture. I think what I have learned best through my career, and especially probably the last 10 years, is choose culture over experience. That may sound cliche, but it's not. You can teach people technical and sales acumen. You can teach them muscle memory. It is very difficult to teach culture. Right. You really need to have an understanding of the individuals coming in. And so being part of we and not me has always been a critical piece of the relationship. Because if we're all in as a team, and going back to another sports analogy, if we're all in to get into this as a team, a general manager is going to have a head coach is going to have an OC coordinator, a defensive coordinator, and that they can do their particular jobs. But if the team isn't the team, and if the culture is not there, it can be a recipe, for failure.
Right. All right. So let me ask you though, like, what happens when you do have that high performer that might not fit the culture? What do you do with that? Like you have somebody that's a rock star, but not kind of fitting in or causing trouble or division on the team.
And again, great question. I've ran into this a number of times. First thing is to find out what the individual wants to do and wants to be. I have had wonderful people that I've worked with. And when you talk about the best of the best and someone who could and should be a great leader decides that's not in my wheelhouse or something that I want to do. And I am happy at being, a regional sales manager or a senior field sales engineer and at that particular level. So I think understanding the individual first and what their aspirations and their goals are. They may just want to be the very best and most dynamic regional sales manager, inside sales manager, business development manager out there. And I think understanding what their goals are will help you to be able to help them, within their career in their current position, but also, potentially in other positions with other companies if they choose to.
Right. But sometimes you'll just run into somebody who just isn't a culture fit, very much a me first type mindset. Do you just cut them or,
No. It's, listen, Leo, firing somebody is the easiest thing to do. It is. And don't get me wrong, it's very hard.
Right.
But investing into the individual to me is the most important thing.
So coach up first, and then if they don't take the coaching, then leaves you no choice.
Yeah, it's motivate up or motivate out.
Right.
But doing everything you can as a leader and as an individual, it's I have to look at myself in the mirror. And if I am cutting someone short, not giving them the opportunity that they deserve, then I am not doing my job as a good manager.
What do you look for? What are the signs that tell you that, hey, we got an issue here with culture, either from an individual or from the team? Like what what happened? Like, what are some of the first things you see that you're like, we got to work on this?
I think the first thing is the leader has to be incredibly transparent with the team around expectations. And I like to call them non-negotiables. And that's not a threat, it's more of a statement. Non-negotiables, for an individual can be getting up in the morning and making up your bed and brushing your teeth and brushing your hair and
Right.
eating breakfast. What are your non-negotiables at work? Proper planning, proper communication, a number of different things, based on the skill set and the need for that particular job. That is very clear if they're taking it serious or not. And so, do they need help? That is the first question. And in most cases, when someone does need help, they're going to ask for it. I run into situations in a lot of cases where you have a little bit of pride in the beginning, but if they understand that they're not meeting the expectations, who doesn't want
right
to not meet the expectations? But every now and then you will just get someone kind of set in their ways where it does become me and not we. And you have to make the hard decisions at that point.
Right. So you're coming in, you're trying to create this culture that, you're leading this team. Sometimes you acquire a team, sometimes you get to rebuild it, but you got this team now, and now you got to lead them through this new transition and through the change. Like, what are some of the challenges, and how do you overcome that?
I just did this recently where we took an investment opportunity and we more than doubled the team. And so you have a good group of people that have been there through thick and thin. They have good history. I like to call it intellectual property, right? It's right. You have a great team that has great product skill set. They understand the company culture. They understand where they've been and where they really want to be able to get to. But then you have this new team that you bring on, and especially these new individuals that you start bringing on may outnumber the original team. So what you don't want to do is to allow the original team to feel like they're second best. You want both sides to be coming up at the very same time. That and understanding that they play a great responsibility and resource in helping the new team, while the new team also can bring new and fresh ideas to them that they may have not experienced in the past. So it's a delicate balance. But once you start bringing these two type of teams and or individuals together, and you put ownership on all of them, that hey, we're all in this together. It as a leader, it makes my job a whole lot easier, making sure that both sides get it.
Right. And putting these teams together and not having them kind of become cliquish, right? We're kind of
absolutely
thing, right. We're all working together. When you're building this new team or bringing new people, obviously, most organizations try to stay flat, but you also have some ability to build a leadership team around you as well. What do you look for in the leaders? What qualities?
Yeah, again, I go back to, everybody can look great on paper from an experience perspective, and doing this, as long as we have, I think it's real easy to see if someone has the potential, the chops, the qualifications. The culture piece, to me, I go back to this steadily. And the reason why is because understanding the individual and what makes that individual tick is going to be much more important in the end of it being a good hire or a not so good hire. Yeah. And understanding the values, and really just, it's like being in sales. Ask the right questions, then be quiet and listen. And so let them tell you why they are a good fit culturally. It's like you look great on paper, but who are you and what do you bring to the organization?
So from that, like, how do you identify the leader? Like when you have a team, everyone's kind of on the same level, right? And then all of a sudden, leaders emerge. What do you see, or what do you look for to identify who that next leader is going to be?
It's the one that asks to do the things that most you have to tell them to do. It is the stepping up and saying, you know what, I'd like to learn how to do this, or I've never experienced doing it this particular way. Do you mind if I get a shot at it? Those are the ones that really stick out to me. Throughout my career, I've had a handful that, that really you can see. It's not that they're wanting to catapult their career at a much faster pace. They're just curious, and they are very intrigued about what can I do at that next level? How can I separate myself from being just a regional sales manager to a senior regional sales manager, and then to, a director, and then senior director, and then VP, and then on and on and on, right? It's kind of like me in my career. If you would have asked me 20 years ago if I would be in the type of roles I have been in, I probably would have said no. But every chance that I got to ask those questions, myself, and to keep learning, it gave me more confidence, but it also gave me more experience to be able to make the right decisions.
Right. It's the ones that show the initiative and the willingness to go above and beyond and not just do whatever the minimum required is, right?
That's it. I think, Leo, when you figure out that you're a part of something that's much bigger than you are, and you want to be a contributor to that, not just someone that's hanging on for dear life, but really want to contribute to the success of the company, but more importantly, to the success of the individuals and your partners.
Yeah.
Then you've really got something.
Right. The ones that's the biggest thing for me, that what I always look for, there's always, B players that will do enough to keep their jobs, that, they'll just hit quota. They'll just do, they'll go through the motions, but they don't really kind of invest themselves into growth. And that's what I always look for. And I'm sure we share that. I know you're big on accountability. Let's talk about accountability. Like, how do you keep your team accountable? Like, what are your methods, and how does that play into your philosophy of leadership?
Well, it starts with the leader and keeping yourself accountable first. And when I look at this, I got the nickname a number of years ago of being called Papa Bear, which is that basically it's this idea that I'm taking care of my team, not just as a team, but individuals. We're all different.
Right.
And we all need mentoring. Even leaders leading a team still need mentorship from the people that they report to and others within the organization. So taking that ownership and really, forcefully, individually, mentoring in the right possible ways. We all love to be told when we're doing things great. It's not so easy when we're being corrected or we're being shown a new way. It may be a smarter way of doing things. So holding your team accountable, but most importantly, holding yourself accountable before anything else. Right. And so, to me, it goes back to the non-negotiables. You understand my thinking. I understand your thinking. Here's, as a team, what we need to do to be successful. Now let's go out and do it. And I'll go back to the B player comment you said earlier, and you're right, 100%. A lot of companies think of only one metric to success, and that's, hitting your target. There are many, many metrics to success for the individual to be successful for the organization and their partners. And so that accountability for me is that you may have hit 100% of your quota, but if you failed at 90% of the other non-negotiables, that's not good.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the scorecard's got to be more than one line, right?
That's right.
You got to have multiple things on that scorecard. So you've been involved with obviously a lot of turnarounds. I think that's one of the hallmarks of your career, is that you've been part of these successful turnarounds and led these companies to acquisition and so forth like that. Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about that? Some of your experiences, and how you approach these opportunities and what's led to the success of them.
Sure. So, and it was unintended, to be honest with you, in the beginning. But many years ago, I was VP of Sales at Clear One, and that was my first VP role. And Clear One had really hit a strategy issue. They were still market leaders at that time of DSP conference products. but the strategy wasn't correct. They, from a revenue perspective, were really starting to go in a backwards direction. And I'll never forget Joe Sorrentino. He and I had been at Polycom together prior, and he recruited me to come in and basically said, here's the situation. We're still market leader, but for some reason, the revenue it's not working. Whatever we're doing, it's not working, and we need to really shake things up. So coming in, the first thing in doing my SWOT analysis is I recognized that the strategy, that was the broken arm of the organization. We had too many of one specific type of role. We did not have enough people taking care of our partners. We had too many people being reactive when it came to the technical aspect, and we just weren't selling. We weren't close to the partner. I'm not kidding you when I tell you I'd been there for about 2 weeks, and we landed a $500,000 job. And my first question was, hey, who's the end user? Nobody could answer the question. So again, it wasn't that they were doing a bad job; they were doing the very best that they could, but that was not their skill set or their muscle memory.
So basically, you got to do a full analysis, and
yeah, and it was unfortunate that we had some great we had some great individuals that they were they were much more aligned with what we did not need from a position standpoint. We needed hunters coming in. We needed more salespeople. We did not have enough RSMs, and we were incredibly heavy on field sales engineers. And both play an incredibly important part, in doing this, but you can't be lopsided on either one. Right. So we had to make a few changes, brought in some new talent from a sales perspective, and within 3 quarters, we had completely turned around, and we were growing at 22 to 28% quarter over quarter.
Amazing. Growth. Yeah, and that's not your only one, but I know you and I have spoken in the past, obviously, about your background in your career, and I know that sometimes you've been tasked with, turning a company around, getting them ready for acquisition, and doing it in a short period of time. How do you balance, short-term objectives that are, and we see this, right? Companies will come in, they'll cut costs, they'll cut this, they'll try to make the balance sheet look really profitable, but it hurts the company long-term. So how do you go in and you balance short-term objectives versus, what's actually long-term beneficial for the company?
I was told many years ago by one of my great mentors, Paul Depperschmidt. He said to me, you better be ready to pivot at a moment's notice, and there better be a plan B backup. You need to be thinking about it before I ask you. I come to you, or somebody comes to you and says this. So that's a short answer to it. But when you're looking at organizations, whether you're actually, the company you're working for is actually purchasing another company, or whether you're part of a carve out, those are two completely different things. Mm-hmm. If you're part of a carve out, human assumption can take over pretty quickly. And human assumption is usually pretty negative to begin with. People start thinking, am I going to lose my job? How's this going to impact me? How's this going to impact the organization? Does it change the culture? And the questions go on and on. That's a little bit tougher to manage, because you can't manage human nature, when it comes to that type of an assumption. But what you can do, and what you should do, and all leadership should do, is be as transparent as you can. If you don't know the answer, then you don't know what that answer is. I think the one thing that has aggravated me more than any is for executive leadership to use the term lift and shift, in going into a new organization, and that you shouldn't expect anything. There are going to be redundancies. There's going to be redundancies in engineering, in management, in marketing, in operations, logistics, everything across the rail, right? Mm-hmm. And to sit there and say that, hey, everything is just going to be okay, don't worry about your job, I don't think that's being truthful. Right. And so I think as transparent as you can be as a leader, when you know it, you should be talking about it to allow the individual to make the right decision for them that is ultimately the right decision for the organization.
Right. Essentially putting people in front of profit, which is a mark of a true leader, in my opinion.
That's my thinking, and I'm sticking to it.
Good. Well, it's done well for you, right?
Well, it in most cases it has, but there are still others that they take the best information that they have. They try to make the best decision they can, and sometimes they pull the trigger too quick because they don't believe. They just think that everything that's coming out of everybody's mouth is a lie,
right.
and they're scared, and listen, rightly so. My kids are all grown and gone now, but if I had young kids, still at home, then maybe I would think the same way. I don't know.
Yeah. So when you're part of these acquisition setups, right? Like where you're joining the team and they're saying, "Hey, Curtiss, we want to be acquired in 2 years, 3 years. We need to get revenue up. We need to do this. We need that." What are you thinking? Like, you're coming in there, you're kind of coming in for a short period of time. You got to kind of get this company attractive. What are you focusing to make this company as attractive as possible?
My number one focus is believing that we have the capability of doing what we're saying that we're going to do. And if not, I'm never going to walk into a situation where there is a high probability of failure, because everyone loses in that type of situation. I've been very fortunate to walk into opportunities where I'm given enough runway, I'm given the tools that I need, and I'm given the capabilities to be able to drive to fruition from goal backwards down to tactics. And I think, to me, that's the biggest part of planning, is going in, again, full SWOT, internal, external, and then starting with your goals first. And then walking backwards. Okay, how long is this really going to take? Is this a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan? Let's right. Start putting this on paper. And what are my trigger points of, okay, starting today, when I get to this amount of revenue, this amount of product, these SKUs, what do I do at that point? Do we hire? Do we invest? Do we change our strategy a bit different to expand out into other markets and other customers? I think, again, looking at the big picture first, and then having those steps that can be done and are and should be achievable. But when it's time to hit that trigger point, just because everything, you feel good and you're fat and happy and you're hitting your numbers, that's when you pull the trigger at that point, because it's the only way that you're going to grow your organization, or to be able to finish up and see the goal that you had set originally.
So what happens when you're not hitting your numbers or
it happens?
Yeah.
Based on timing. That's where, before you wait until that happens, there has to be complete ownership and on the inside. Sales can't be successful if the rest of the business isn't. So right. if operationally you are broken, that it has a very negative impact on sales. If you don't have the right product mix, if you don't have the right products coming, if you don't have the right products in stock, logistically, if we can't get it shipped out, picked, packed, and shipped, right. in a specific amount of time, all of those are reasons for partners to leave the partnership. So the entire organization has to be firing on all cylinders. So long way to answer the question is, they have to have the very same buy-in that the sales team has.
Sure,
the sales leadership has, and ultimately that ownership or right. executive leadership has. Right. And if they don't, that's a potential issue. If they do, great things can happen.
But let's talk about, like, you mentioned like hitting milestones and trigger points and stuff like that. But like, how do you decide, when to continue to push forward and saying, all right, we're on the right track, we're just behind, versus like pivoting and saying, hey, maybe we're not doing this right. Maybe the plan isn't right. How do you know when to pivot away?
I would say, for me, in my experience, and especially over the last 15 years, is the pivot for me hasn't been so much we're failing. The pivot is, okay, now we're growing. And what do we need to do to start focusing more, say, on DMRs, the IT channel? We're really driving into areas that we've never had the experience before. And it's almost like inventing new business. So to me, that's much more of a pivot that I've experienced more than, wow, things are really just not working out. And don't get me wrong, regionally, yeah, you may have certain territories where you have to pivot or you have to look at something different. I'm making this up, right? But you may have 5 territories on the West Coast that you've walked into that you've adopted basically, from an original strategy. But then you have to go back and look and say, really, I only need two territories,
Right.
in this. So to me,
I know, but
that's the type of pivot.
But you make your plan, right?
That's right.
I'm assuming in your 30-year career, not everything was perfect, right? Not everything.
No.
So I guess that's what I'm trying to dig into is like, when did you know that you had to go to plan B? You mentioned that earlier, right? That you always have to have a plan B and ready to go. And when do you go to plan B?
Yeah, without getting into too much specifics,
Right.
based on confidentiality. I mean, there have been times where the original plan was X, and then after a period of time, certain things happen, and that particular plan it's the executive leadership doesn't want that to happen any longer.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, there is a pivot at that point. And what do we do about that? And it could be the elimination of roles. It could be the elimination of the entire group itself. It's just, it doesn't, again, I want to be careful. It doesn't mean that you were failing. It means that the pivot had to take place because new priorities, were decided upon. Yeah. And the priorities in certain circumstances are, yes, this priority should move in this direction because it's going to pay 10x versus what this particular priority, was going to happen.
Yeah, I understand that. And it's true that there's, I guess, what I liked about your answer about always having a plan B is because there's always a change in, landscape changes every day, right? Like more so, I think yesterday and today, with the tariff thing and everyone's constantly juggling and figuring it out and so much uncertainty that you always have to have, mitigation plans, right? Like a plan B, a plan C, and what if this, what if that?
COVID, and those are great examples. I can say for tariffs, both this time and last time, never had to pivot. We were doing great. Partnerships were great. Everything was fine. COVID, completely different situation. Huge investment. We're bringing in new people, and then COVID happens, and you have no choice but to have a plan B. At that point, and make that particular type of pivot.
When you're making these big decisions, besides your colleagues on the leadership team, do you have like your own trusted circle of advisors or
Always, and you need to. If you're a leader trying to make decisions by yourself, then that's not very smart to do. I have always believed that I see things that others don't, and others see things that I don't. It's like 4 different people standing on 4 different corners, and an accident in the center happens. We know the accident happened, but everybody sees it differently. So having that group, small as it may be, group of people to talk through this with always is important. And I say that from somebody that made a mistake very early in my career of thinking that, it was me that knew everything. And and again, I'm not ashamed to say it because I think we all grow, we all learn, and we all realize that we don't know everything, right?
Right.
But, it's, again, cutting someone loose, it doesn't matter if you feel that they're qualified, unqualified, you like them personally, you don't mesh. It is the hardest thing in the world to do, and it should be. And any leader that says it's easy to do this or it's just business, It is the most personal thing there is.
Yeah, it is. It's a hard thing to do. So your this advisory board that you have, I'm assuming it's colleagues, in and out of the industry. How did you create this advisory board? Like how did you build it, or where did it come from?
Yeah, I think the important part is that don't stay. And I would tell this to anyone that's either a long-term manager or leader that has never done this, or someone who's wanting to become a leader. Is there need to be people inside your inner circle within the industry, and it needs to be up to you to maintain those relationships. Don't wait for them to call you. Don't wait for them to contact you. Stay in contact with these people, because it doesn't just benefit you in hard times like this. It benefits you also in good times. Yeah. Hey, I see you guys are doing great things, through your LinkedIn posting. How's that working? What's the benefit? More importantly, what are you learning as a leader, from this new way of doing business?
Right.
And I would just say it that particular way is that when you put together a group, and again, it's less than that many that I talk to that deeply about, what's going on, and, kind of things that I may be thinking of. I may not be talking about an individual or a specific strategy, but really, trying to understand from their standpoint, hey, if you were in this type of situation, what would you be thinking?
Right. No, it makes perfect sense. It's why not? Why not have, and the answer is ego, right? A lot of people, like you said, feel that they need to have all the answers. And the truth is you really don't. You need to be able to go get the right answers.
Go get the right answers.
Yeah.
My wife has taught me that very well.
Exactly. Let's talk about the AV industry. 30 plus years, you've seen it evolve tremendously.
I think.
Yeah. Like what looking back, like what are some of the biggest shifts that you saw over the years? And,
here's what impressed me so much early in my career is there was like a new technology coming out on a regular basis. We go from the days of CRT displays.
Yeah.
And then projectors come out, and then you have, and I was part of the initial pioneer team that brought out plasma TV,
right.
And to have the first 40-inch and then the first 50-inch industrial piece that we just we couldn't keep them in stock. $30,000 a pop. You would go work 3 days out of the week, and then you play golf the next 2 days because you had nothing else to sell until the next batch came in.
Those were the good old days.
If I miss anything, from that is I miss all of the new technology.
Yeah.
What I will say the good that's come from this is we're an industry that's not so much focused any longer on selling boxes as much as we are on selling solutions. Now, you're still going to have certain box commodity type of products. Projectors are one of those. But what projectors can do to help with a solution today versus what they did originally, boy, it's just night and day. So I think what I love about the industry, where it has been and where it continues to keep going, is that selling that solutions so much in a box. And it doesn't have to be a manufacturer that sells every single thing in the solution, but making sure that they are complementary and working together.
So Curtiss, you've been involved obviously for a long time, 30 plus years. And you talked about the evolution from going from product to solution and so forth. What's next? Where do you see this industry kind of going and moving forward?
Well, good question. And again, I think solutions will continue to really keep driving behavior. I think, as I mentioned earlier, we've spent and looked at the last 20 years of really trying to pull IT inside of AV. And I think, with the type of needs that are required now by the customer, because they're looking for one throat to choke. They want to have someone to be able to come in and handle anywhere from security to unified communications to AV, whether it's the boardroom or the lunchroom or the auditorium. And so what I see is really solution providers that will be the real gateway into helping to propel AV, and IT into the end user sector.
Yeah, so, and that's something that's kind of almost like a repetitive theme, like in most of my episodes. Like this always comes up, right? It's funny. Like Dan Farisi mentioned the one throat to choke.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the other day with Todd McCandless, and he mentioned like putting an RJ45 in the back of AV equipment, open up a whole new world to the AV integrators, and which some were ready, some weren't. And now we have this AVIT kind of thing. Like, are we going to get, swallowed up by the IT industry? Like, who's innovating? Like, who's going to be that one throat, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think AV dealers or AV integrators and AV manufacturers really need to do to kind of keep their footing?
Well, I twofold. It's kind of a two answer question. Is number one, you need to accept this if you want to continue to keep growing your business and your customer base. There's nothing wrong with integrators that want to focus on specific verticals, but focusing on the type of customer that requires, again, the need for security, the need for cloud-based capabilities, that need. And if you're not that type of integrator, if you're not going that far out, you are limiting yourself from being able to be the type of partner that a lot of even small companies now need. It's not the Fortune 500 that really started demanding this years ago, right? But it's the smaller companies now that they want this. And if you're truly going to be that value type of integrator, that value type of solution provider, you better jump on board.
Yeah.
And I think, again, the other piece to that is that if you're just based on house of worship, do you have to do it, to sell a system? No. But again, you're going to limit yourself.
What about the manufacturers? How do they keep innovating? You mentioned that was your favorite part of the 30 years was the constant innovation.
Well, yeah. And I think, the partnership that has to continue to keep taking place between manufacturers so products work together, take a non-proprietary technology and turning it into a solution. It doesn't mean that a single manufacturer has to sell everything, but you better work with everything. I will say that some acquisitions, that have happened in the past and that are happening now, Kramer buying ZV is a good example. This, really helped, to take the ZV portfolio of AV over IP and really help to put Kramer, I think, in a new situation now. I think you're going to have other manufacturers to look at that. Again, you don't have to sell every box, but you need a good bit of what's needed.
And what are your thoughts, as far as black boxes go? Like, to me, my concern is that a lot of this is going to move over to software codecs, where everyone just has like a USB-C hub and let software do everything.
I agree with you. And to me, that then turns into a concern, for the integrator that, their business model is very much based around, selling boxes instead of that, again, a cloud-based type of service, something to where you're managing software, you're not managing hardware.
Right. Yeah. Eventually it's going to have to be like move into more of a services model, because all that revenue has to be made up somehow. Right.
That's right.
What about AI? Obviously that's on everyone's mind. Where do you see AI fitting into the AV space?
It's going to happen. My greater concerns are not so much around, say, manufacturing or development. My concerns more are around traditional business at the manufacturer, at the distributor, at the integrator, from a sales and marketing standpoint, from a logistics standpoint. I think there are great things that AI can bring to an organization to help them streamline. But when we focus much more on streamlining than customer satisfaction, which ultimately leads to lack of retention, if they're not feeling that there's a human on the other end of the line helping them with their business, to me, that's the greatest concern, is that we go too fast, too deep into AI.
Yeah, no, I had an IoT expert on a couple episodes back, and he's like, it's not that AI is going to take our jobs, but if you don't use AI, your job will be taken by somebody who does, right?
That's right.
So the human touch and the human attention will never be replaced by AI. Hopefully not.
Let's hope not.
Let's hope not. Right. Yeah. No, it's just something that I always think about is the I feel like AI is the next revolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've had evolution, but AI is the next revolution. And I feel like it's a great opportunity for integrators to add that to their product offerings, become AI enablers, helping companies enable AI into their products, and then also gives you a chance to go in and refresh their equipment and say, hey, is your conference room AI ready? Is boardroom AI ready? And so forth like that.
And just to add to that, Leo, I think from an education standpoint, it's going to be very helpful as well. You want to make sure that, obviously it doesn't take the job of a programmer, but that it does assist the programmer in doing a flawless programming job, and doing it in a timely manner that's good for the company and is good for the customer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So looking back, thinking, I know you still got some gas in the tank, but
yeah, a little bit.
When you look back at your career and your legacy, what are you most proud of? What do you look back with a lot of sentimental pride?
Well, and I said this in the CI interview about, the question was, do you have any regrets? And my answer is absolutely not. I would not change a single thing about my career. It has been the most rewarding thing that I could never have imagined this. But it really comes down to the people. In the beginning, those that had enough faith in me and believed enough in me to give me, that first opportunity, and then to give me another opportunity, and for me to start really developing a skill set that I felt I wanted to do, that I was capable of doing, and in an industry that I have loved from day one. This will be my 26th Infocom coming up.
Yeah.
I still want to make another 10, but I look at this and, to answer your question, it's my legacy. Whatever I leave, I hope is the very best that I can leave, that I leave nothing, on the field, but it's all about the people that were there in the beginning, the people that, have put their trust into me from a leadership perspective, both those that have hired me, but those that have come to work for me, and work with us, right? That have trusted the person and the process, not just, the process.
Yeah. And look, like I got into this industry as an integrator, and I was focused on the products and the projects and this and that. And, as I moved to becoming a recruiter to servicing this industry and working with the people, it's actually been way more rewarding,
Absolutely.
and that's been great for me, and even in my show promo, I talk about like, hey, this industry is full of amazing immersive sound systems and latest, video walls and all this great tech. But what really, really makes this industry great, and it's not to be cliche, it's true. It's the people. We have a great industry with a lot of great people in it. And I'm sure for you, with the number of people you've worked with and touched, and who believed in you and followed you and trusted you. So I'm sure that's, you take a lot of pride in that.
I take pride in being Papa Bear. So, for me, again, it's the way, I wanted to raise my kids, and it's the way I wanted to be, remembered as an individual, as a leader, and, elevating the people around you, mentoring. And I love, I'll mentor until I have no more breath left in my body. I love it that much. But yeah, it's definitely, the people have made this journey incredible.
Right. So what's next? You're not done. What's next?
I use it's the old metaphor of the golfer trying to get that hole in one. So I got a bunch of birdies. I got, a few nice eagles throughout my career, but the hole in one, that perfect swing, I'm still looking for.
Right.
So, I think, the thing for me is I love kind of during this off time, I like to do, a little contracting work on the side. While I, look at whatever those next opportunities are. And so for me, I'm not going anywhere. I have, it's like for me, it's like I have no retirement plan because I don't want to retire. I
Right.
love what I'm doing. I love this industry. I want to see this industry continue to keep growing. I want to see more diversity, within our industry. I like to joke that, I'm the oldest, whitest guy on the Avixa Diversity Council, and I do it for a reason. Is
Right.
because I want great diversity. I
Yeah.
want to see an industry where, I look at, only 5% of design engineers are female in our industry. That
Yeah.
needs to change. We need to work harder around education. We need to go into the inner city. We need to talk about pro AV, ITUC as a trade, and that pays incredibly great money to
It's
individuals. And we need to be putting our arms
yeah.
around these communities and these individuals, and to bring them in to make this industry keep growing.
I think it's crazy that we don't promote this, because you can go out and get a CTS, right? You could go work for a company, basically learn the ropes, get your CTS, and then you're making six figures.
Or starting your own company.
Right. Yeah. All of it. Right. No, there's exponential opportunities there, and it goes all different directions without having to go to college and pay 50 to 75,000 a year, come out with debt, and then you can't afford anything. You could literally have a six. I was talking to a contractor for direct view LED video walls. Those guys are charging $1,000 a day. A day.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys are making 300 grand a year. It's crazy that we don't promote this as an industry and really get people into this awesome industry that's so much fun, great people, and it can be very, very lucrative.
I've often said to my wife, I wish that I could win a major lottery, because I would take every penny and I would develop a university or a
Right.
school or something that focused on UC, AV, IT, that brings everybody together, that can learn engineering, design, installation, programming, and really just focus on this industry. This industry could be so much more with just a bit of investment on everybody's part.
Right. And especially, AV, IT, AI, all of it blended together, security, all things that people need and want.
Absolutely.
And there are some efforts, I know there's that group at Pace University and a lot of internships and stuff like that, but we got to do more. We got to do better. And it's got to be everyone. Everyone's got to kind of pitch in.
And you just hit the nail on the head. It can't be 2%. We've got to be all in if we want to see this industry grow the way that it should.
It should. Right. All right, Curtiss, we've kind of covered a lot. I definitely appreciated the conversation and all your insights. Definitely a masterclass on leadership and culture building. And obviously, if people are looking to learn more, I know you're always open to connecting and mentoring. So people should be reaching out, and executives should be smart enough to go grab you too, since you're a free agent right now. But anyways, thank you so much for coming in. Enjoy the conversation. And to the listeners, if you're still here and listening, we appreciate you. Please give us a like, hit the subscribe button. A 5-star review is always appreciated. And have a great week, and good luck with all of your hunts.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Leo. You are a rock star. Thank you for all you do here.
Thank you. Thanks, Curtiss. It means a lot coming from you. It really does. Thank you.